Hello and welcome to Fan Animation Retrospective. I am Mintirut. You might have seen my panel yesterday when I was discussing how to make fan animation. And today, the panel, the whole approach of this panel is a bit akin to a director's commentary. But unfortunately, one of the problems that you get a lot with whenever you watch a DVD with the director's commentary is that they don't get the opportunity to actually pause the movie and actually elaborate on anything, which, in my opinion, is quite a shame. We don't have that opportunity. But through the magic of me doing it live from my laptop and having a pause button, I'll be finally able to elaborate on some very cool stuff that I want to point out in some animations. I will be covering 2 animations today if I have the time. I'm giving it about an hour and a half, so I have lots of opportunity. I'll be covering Missing Out and Bronicon's Good Morning Baltimore. So a piece about why nostalgia can be toxic, and a piece that is very nostalgic. I see a bit of irony in this. So I will, without further ado, I'll be starting Missing Out. Missing Out was started a bit at the beginning of the pandemic. It was released at TrotCon 2022. The one TrotCon that I missed because work denied my request for a time off, basically telling me that the movie I was working on was more important, that I needed to stay at work. And then I was told that a movie that was so important got canceled. So I am still a bit salty about it, but that's part of life, and I think it's also a bit important to realize that Missing Out also talks about the idea of, as I cleverly called it, missing out on things. So let's start. Let's select this. Let's open it. Let's open this with film to the TV. And there we go. So one of the things I've been doing a lot in my fan animations since The Fall of Sunset Shimmer, just starting from black and finding a way to start from black to the actual scene. In this case, the idea was simply to pan up to the moon, and the way that was approached was simply that the scene was just rendered on giant canvas, and one of the cool things you could see. So the ripples are not simulated, it's simply just a bump mapping technique, and the whole idea with the bump mapping is you simply you inform the shape that the face should have. It doesn't really impact the silhouette of the shape, it just impacts where it points. And the idea is simply to have some circles that would be formed by the waves, and then you just give a formula that would be procedural. And just by having that and just animating it to follow, I could just art direct it to look like what I had in mind with the nice moon. And you'll see in this transition that it's technically 2 scenes that I'm merging because I realized that I had 2 very complex setups, and having 2 separate setups would need less trouble than just one mega setup to be a paint render. So you just have the camera just panning and we're just sliding 2 clips like this. And you'll see that Dinky has Starswell the Bearded bed sheets. It's actually reused from a project from almost 10 years ago now, where I was thinking like, Dinky is a unicorn, she really likes magic. What kind of bed sheets would she have? And as it turns out, Twilight also had some bed sheets a bit like that, and I thought it was perfect. And then you have the reveal of the whole Ponyville set that was a nightmare to model. And one thing I'll point out is that if you look at all the houses, besides some of the landmarks, for example, the town hall, the 4 shops that are on this corner here, and some of the tents, all the houses that you see with attached roofs, there's just 10 of them just scattered all over the place. Because, in part because of memory constraints, because that's just way too many models to have on a computer at once, but also because in a lot of cases, lots of house complex, you have lots of houses that just happen to just look the same because they just tend to follow the same models, same patterns. And some of them will look a bit different over time, but I realized that with the style of the show, the way that everything looked, it made the most sense to have just 10 different houses just seen from different angles. It'd be a lot less trouble. And then you see in the far back, you're going to see a waterfall, and at some point I was thinking, like, what would be the best way to have that kind of waterfall that would be showed? Like, I don't see it from very close. I'm just thinking, like, it's going to be a nightmare to model and render and all, until I realized, no, let's just take footage of a waterfall, just paste it on top, and just project it. And I realized, okay, that's the way to go, because it just works. You have the Crystal Castle, the Castle of Friendship, and you'll see right away a transition. And technically, it's transitioning from. It's not really transitioning from two different scenes. It's simply that I realized that the shot would be so long that fading from one part to the other would just cut me a lot of time. I think the whole scene, if it didn't have that transition, would last 25 seconds. And I like very long establishing shots. I don't think everybody does. And as I was talking about transitioning from one scene to the other, technically from this point to this, it's a completely different set, because I realized that having a low poly model of the whole castle would make the most sense for the wides, and for the close-ups I only need the balcony. It saved me a lot of time. So you have the scene where you have Spike just spying on people because he's a kid. And the first line from I'm Shadow, who is wonderful. She's been my Twilight since that project. And she's also been voicing a couple of other characters for me. She's wonderful.
Hey Spike, have you seen Starlight? I can't find her anywhere.
I think she went to the library.
And this is Spike from Katebug. The funny thing is that when I contacted Katebug about it, the one thing she told me was, oh yeah, I used to voice Spike. Because she was, when I realized that she could voice Spike, she was doing a casting call for Dr. Wolf, where she was just reenacting the one scene from that Dragon Quest, where Spike is asking about himself. I realized, hey, she'd make a very, very good Spike. And so I just contacted her, and I just realized, oh shoot, I haven't talked to you in forever too. And I felt very old. And here you have the main conflict, the idea of the library. When you'll see later. You can also see that Spike is propped up by a little box with Celestia's cutie mark on it. I wasn't too sure what he should be using to prop himself because of the layout of the scene. I was just realizing that looks like something that would be important. I feel like you'd use something important to prop himself up because he's Spike. So, and I think it worked well for the scene, for the needs. Yeah.
No, Twilight.
And in this shot, you'll see that the blur of the background is very weird. You have the very sharp part here, and it just transitions really weird in that part. This is emulating a split diopter. Back in the days, whenever they wanted to have a shot where you had two characters or two elements that you wanted to keep in focus at the same time, but you didn't have the optics to keep all of it in deep focus, what you'd have is a lens that's cut in half. And the idea is half of the lens would be focusing on one element and the other wouldn't. So you'd have lots of shots where you'd have two actors and the background would be weirdly blurred behind one of the actors, and then that was dramatic. And the idea with that is that when you have that kind of blur, it's mostly just a property of the lens. With CG, we don't really have that, but I realized that with that kind of extreme close-up that would need to be still in focus, while Spike would also need to be in focus, it would make the most sense for the two elements to be shot with a split diopter lens. And I thought, let's emulate that with animation, and emulating it was not too hard, it was just compositing trick. You can also see the way that the lighting was handled, the idea that Twilight was in the light from the castle. So just trying to composite all of that while considering all the lights that were not too visible would be quite a challenge.
The old one.
And you'll see here, Blue Brony did the music for the project, and in a lot of scenes, you don't have characters talking. I just let him do the music and just tell the story through the music, he did an incredible job in my opinion.
I think she's been there a lot lately. Maybe you should go check out if she's alright.
Originally, I was supposed to have a shot where Twilight would jump out of the balcony to start flying, but I realized that's a lot. Let's just jump straight to her flying. Just to give you a good idea of where everything is set in 3D space. Even though technically she did a detour to make the sequence work. And then you have Twilight and Starlight sequence. And one of the ideas that the way I was inspired to do the sequence, the idea of the holographic tree, was inspired by the idea of whenever you had a camera projection. The idea is that you have a 3D bottle and you just project from a 3D camera the image that you already captured. And I was thinking, like, how would you try to reconstitute a scene out of photographs? What kind of thing it would look like? So you see the shot from the position of the camera, and as the camera flies, you can see a bit the distortion caused by that kind of warping done by the projection. And the approach for that was very simple. I already had a setup with the scene with the 3D Tree of Harmony already set. I placed some cameras in points where I would need to have the camera. Then I had some excuses as to why the characters would be there. For example, Fluttershy looking at the beehive. And then I just rendered those views. And since I already had the positions of those cameras, what I did is I put a card with the picture already rendered. I put a spotlight and actually used it as a projector on a surface. And then the surface was rendered separately, and then I could use that as some kind of holographic glow. And you just add some glow, you get the nice volumetric lighting, it just looks incredible. And there's a little clever trick I did, is that the characters involved in the picture, I realized it would look really weird if they were just pasted and just smudged over the surface. They slowly fade out, so you just see the tree as it keeps going. And you'll see also that in the music you have Blue Brony. I was not originally expecting him to use the beeps and the magnetic effects that you hear at each of the photos to actually build his own music for the part. A little production thing too is that I realized that trying to get the timing of the characters talking would be a nightmare, and trying to get the timing of the scene of the holographic tree would be a nightmare too. Since I had two separate setups that I had to render at once with those same timings, I realized like they need to be separate in terms of setup for when they talk and when they look at a tree. So all the setups, for example, the background was just a mock-up of the other version. So you don't really actually see a version of the tree of the holographic tree being shown. Just see cards floating in space that simulate the look, because it would be a lot more. For example, if I realized too late that the talking would be too long, I would have to re-render everything. And I realized, like, let's do two separate setups. You just stare at it and you just cut between the two. And you have the little glows, you have little flares. It was a bit of a trick to try to make it so the flares would be very bright, but it wouldn't obscure the character animation, because of course you want to see what's going on. You want to see the characters. And as I need to also introduce, I had Anna Chloe-M as Starlight Glimmer, and I didn't realize while I was trying to do the casting that she'd make a really, really good Starlight Glimmer. She was Princess Celestia in the Fall Sunset Shimmer, and I was trying to think of who would be perfect for it until I realized I was told, I don't remember who told me that she'd make a great one, and I just asked her, like, do you feel confident in this role? And I gave her a try, and she did an incredible performance.
Maybe it's still incomplete. I can figure out what the tree looks like.
which is actually based on something real. There's no instance within the whole show of the back of the tree, which makes sense because it's a landmark that is mostly seen from the front because it's very iconic. But you'd think you'd have a shot from the back from, I don't know, a character hiding from another, but they never did one. So when I was modeling it, I had to get to do some guesswork as to what it would look like from the back, and I realized like if it's not shown from the back in the show, it's probably because it looks boring from the back. So
Are you kidding me? That looks incredible. You should be proud of your work.
and you have the door that's about to open. I had to cheat the door in terms of because it's supposed to be a glow, so it wouldn't make sense for the door to. It's supposed to be a glowing door as well, but I realized that having a glowing door would be basically invisible. It would just be pure white that I couldn't see. So there's a little compositing trick where I added the door on top with just a normal mapping, normal blending mode. So technically the door just becomes more physical in this scene. It doesn't glow like everything else. And I was a bit worried that it would be clashing a bit in that shot, but I realized that after all that it doesn't matter too much. And you can see also the photos as they're floating just in the shot, so you see a bit the perspective view.
Wait, I clearly remember this door opening the other way. What? But the door is clearly meant to be opened this way.
Okay, so do you have a really weird inside joke that has nothing to do with ponies and that's related to something that you did with your grandmother when you were a kid? This is based on a real thing that happened with. I was visiting my grandmother at one point, and she was with some friends, and one of those friends recognized me back when I was a kid, and she asked me, "Oh, you're the guy who asked me about my windshield wipers," asking me like, "Are they going this way or this way?" And just the way she mimed it was so funny. And when I realized that the door of the Golden Oak Library just opened in different ways, I thought like it'd be hilarious to just have Starlight just miming how the doors will open. And technically the way she mimes them doesn't match the way that they actually open, but just the way she just keeps moving is just hilarious. And then I realized, oh, Starlight is kind of just sitting on her back legs, and ponies are not supposed to do that. So
Oh, right.
there we go.
You were never there when the library was still standing. The door used to open.
One interesting thing about this element, the idea that Starlight points out that, the Twilight points out that Starlight was not there when the library was standing, was an element I was supposed to bring up later, but I realized like I don't want to tease the fans who already are fully aware of the fact. Part of the animation was inspired by the idea that it was more of a thought experiment, like saying like what it would be like if I got to see some of the very early pony conventions, and then I would learn like you'll see a bit later, but what would it feel like to experience those conventions, knowing all the things I know now, all the things that have happened since. And at some point I just realized Starlight has never seen the Golden Wolf Library. She arrived like a season late. So just the idea of, she probably would have some FOMO about it and just hearing about things. And I was inspired by it in terms of FOMO as well because of What About Discord, where the whole episode is also about FOMO. But I felt when I saw that just making it about just one inside joke would be a bit weak. So that's where the inspiration for Missing Out came from.
Open this way. But the old librarian who lived here before me made it into a regular door.
I was asked if it's something canon. It's not. I just guessed that there was probably someone before. When I was tasked to do to basically help for the translation, I was asked like, is it supposed to be a stallion or a mare? Because in some languages it's gendered. So in my guess that I had, I was just picturing sweet old mare just holding the library before Twilight came in, and just writing about the library that was probably a very important part of the town in a more social manner. So a lot of it is coming up with ideas, and sometimes the lore of the show doesn't really give the answers. So coming up with your own is quite important as well, to try to come up with new ideas to make it more full as in terms of with the franchise, because we've had 9 seasons of the show and not all the the questions answered. So coming up with some of our ideas ourselves is quite interesting, and that's one of the ideas that I had that I thought would be really sweet. I never really got the design for her, but I'm pretty sure someone already had drawn her before. So let's keep going.
I didn't know that.
You're gonna see. You probably saw cross-shaped with just cross-shaped image as the tree was blowing up. And as it turns out, it's not actually part of a render. It's just one glitch frame that looked really cool to make the feel like it was just exploding. And now you'll see the way I was originally thinking of the tree exploding. I was thinking, what if just the car just started misaligning, and you could see some very slight misalignment just by the fact that they're floating, and then you could see the extreme of it, and just giving some distortion to the mesh it is projecting on, and then you have the car just falling, and as they're falling, added some sparks, so it just looks like this.
I guess I screwed up. I wanted this to be perfect, and I couldn't get it right at all.
It's not such a big deal. I'm sure the others will still appreciate it. Hey, I remember that photo. Princess Celestia wanted a nice picture of all of us she could frame in Camelot. And it's not because you missed out on the memories of the tree. It's because you're missing on them, right?
And originally the script started out as supposed to answer, just saying it's not just a tree, but I realized that it just didn't end well, just having her just start talking, and I just realized like just cutting to silence would just work better. And cutting to silence was also very relevant because in the next scene, so you go back to the Tree of Friendship, and this scene where you have just Starlight struggling to sleep because of all the events that happen was supposed to be narrated. We recorded a whole narration of her with Starlight just wondering what to do, and I realized like this doesn't work. For one, the show doesn't use that kind of inner monologue for the characters. And also I was thinking like it's not like the show, it's not just because I need to follow the exact formula of the show. Like I don't have the exact pacing of an episode, I don't have the intro going on, I don't have the same kind of music, I don't have the same kind of visual style. I could go with an inner monologue for this scene, and while cutting the the early draft of the animatic, I had the audio just playing, and I just realized it doesn't work, and unfortunately for Anna, the scene was cut. And this is just the Canterlot model from the Fall of Sunset Shimmer with some tiny improvements. One of the challenges was that the Canterlot model was just made for matte paintings. It was very, very rough, and it took forever to render. So I had to make something that would look good enough for this shot. It was a nightmare to light as well because I couldn't do a lot of indirect lighting because of the rendering limitations of the time. Adding some layers of clouds, trying to get the train to look good in it, adding some layers of smoke, adding some layers of water, just to get something that looked interesting. And then eventually I got a recipe that looked with some nice colors. Since then I got a better Canterlot model, as you've probably seen in the preview I've shown yesterday. But you can see also, it's very hard to see, but Luna is on top of the tower. And the way that I enter in Canterlot is kind of weird in terms of angle, but it's just to keep continuity as you keep with the next shot where you see Starlight just walking by. And you can also hear Blue Brony just keeping the theme of that you heard earlier. He did an incredible job with that. And you have a shot that I rendered with the beta version of Cycles X when it came out. The project came around when Eevee became stable in terms of rendering, so it helped me a lot in terms of rendering for the project. But as I was starting to do all the renders in Eevee, the Blender Foundation started announcing Cycles X, which would render 10 times faster. I was thinking, like, there's a shot I'd like to use to test it, and I had this sequence that didn't have any volumetrics, and I thought, like, this would look incredible with ray tracing. And yeah, well, technically I say 2D, but it's technically an assemblage of 2D layers, but it's set in 3D space. I developed a tool because Toon Boom technically works in 3D space for everything. You can import 3D models, but the rendering of those 3D models is very rough. It's basically gray shades. Sometimes you'd have textures, but they glitch out. The lighting is also very flat. And I realized, let's do something that looks incredible. And I was thinking, Blender is really good at rendering it. So we developed a tool to synchronize the camera between Blender and Toon Boom. So you'd have two separate scenes, but they all share the same proportions. So you'd keep the ponies within the proxy scene just to have a good idea of the layout. And the idea is that you have, basically you just have the matching camera, and then you composite the elements together in After Effects. And actually there's a shot later that I'll be able to showcase a bit better why it's a very, very good approach to that. This shot. So one of the challenges that I had with the tool is that I wanted to show all the things that it could do, and I was thinking, since all the pieces are set in 3D space, you can actually reflect them by doing a mirror and basically just copying the animation. And you could also skew the animation in a way to actually get a shadow cast on the ground. And I was realizing, like, let's do all three at once. Let's have all the elements and then try to composite them. I had to separate the 3D renders to just get just a pass of the light from the back, so I could isolate it and then get the shadow. And as you see a bit here, you can also see the reflection in that door that is just a comp. It's basically just cheating by matching the position later. But you're going to be able to see that. Since I isolated the light from this, you see that there's no overlap with the shadow cast and the end of that region. So, and the idea with that scene originally was supposed to be 3 shots. You had the close-up as Starlight would arrive, you'd have the wide, and then you have the other shot. You see here. And the idea was really, originally I wanted to mislead people into thinking, oh, it's still in Canterlot. And as you see the camera, it slowly pans out, you realize, oh, I know exactly what she's doing without saying anything. And then you have this shot. And originally this was the one key shot I wanted to, that I ended up getting with the trailer, where you have the most important idea that just follows. We have the 3 roofs of the Golden Library. And then it fades out to the original model that I had for the holographic tree. And yeah, there's, I'll need to cut back to the later. So you have Starlight's reaction. And one thing I haven't really covered much is the shadows. One of the key elements I wanted to get right is the idea that the ponies won't just be flat, they have some shadows. And one of the techniques you can do is offset masking, where you just slide a bit off in screen space, and then you just have the corner that's just lit differently. It doesn't look very good for a lot of situations, so I realized I need to have a separate color that's part of the rig that's just for shadows. You isolate that color separately, and then you use it as a mask to get the shadows. And since the color is separate, but it's connected to all the pieces as they move, the shadow follows the pieces. So you have the shadow that's done for the horn, you have the shadow for the mouth, the head, the legs. They really follow properly. It feels very stable, but you need to have to draw them manually for each of those shots. And one thing that's quite interesting is that Starlight's eye color is wrong for the whole animation, and I realized after it came out, because I didn't realize because the eye color just fits because it fits the stripe on her mane, but no, it's actually it says Shimmer's eye color. That it's since the rig is based on one from the Fall of Sunset Shimmer with some improvements. The one thing I wanted to get right well, I wanted to get a couple of improvements, but one of the problems with Toon Boom, sometimes it doesn't synchronize the colors properly. It somehow remembers a color from something that has been done like 3 versions ago of the rig. And in the case here where you have the Starlight rig that's based on the Sunset rig with some minor improvements, it just picked up those eye colors, and I didn't realize because it didn't look jarring. So. And you can see also the fact that the highlight it doesn't have a shadow on it, because I had to render the highlights and all the elements of the eyes separately just to get them to pop properly, and it really helps to focus the attention on the eyes. And the reveal that she's in the past. Originally, I was not too sure if it was worth it to do that kind of reveal or to let just people figure it out later. But I realized, like, let's set all the presumptions right away. Let's set what to expect out of it, and you have just the moon just to set the time. And one key thing about the Golden Library within the show is that you never see really the interior and the exterior at the same time. So you don't really have a good idea of what it's supposed to look like in total. And one of the reasons is very simple. It's much bigger on the inside. So it was thinking, like, I'd like a nice shot where Starlight enters. And originally I was thinking, like, let's make a proxy model that just looks like the interior, because we've had a couple of live action productions where they just have the exterior shot that's shot outside, and then everything where the interior is shot in studio. And just for the shot where they're outside and need to open the door, just have either just a rough picture that plays behind. Sometimes they'll use blue screen, or sometimes it's just very rough approximation. But in this case, I wanted to have the exterior and the interior at the same time. So what I had to do was to cut out the exterior to just have the front face of it and angle it in a way where you'd actually not be able to see the difference. And then you have the background here that's actually just a cutout with some stretching to try to fake the perspective, because none of that would be able to work in 3D space.
Pinky, come in. You got here just in time. The party's just started.
And the music you hear in the back, I didn't know that until Bloober when he pointed out to me as he was working on the music. This is Giggle at the Ghostlies, that just as a cover that plays on the record player. And he was thinking, like, I like to do my own version of it.
Wait a minute.
Pinky Sense. And one of the interesting things is that since the Golden Library in the original episode was done in 2D, they could actually cheat with the perspective a lot. And it feels a lot smaller when you have the actual 3D model with all the characters that were involved. And that was one of the things I was very worried about at first, especially with all the characters I had to render. And Toon Boom doesn't like to have that many instances. And you have Spike.
Hey, you must be
Getting the bottle as a 3D model as Twilight is holding it was a nightmare. My favorite part is the animation of the hot sauce just pouring, because it's not a simulation of a liquid. It's simply something that I just hand animated with some masks just to get the look right. And then you can see in the back Derpy in her introductory scene. Because of course you keep the one animation error that people liked, and you make another animation error with her eyes, because I'm an idiot.
Twilight, I'm Starlight Glimmer. Nice to meet you.
You can hear Pinky in the back, and yeah, originally I was thinking of going with the original slapstick of the scene. I was thinking it would probably be more interesting if you just don't give the expected outcome. Just Twilight go, and she just leaves out of just tiredness, and then you just see Starlight. You just look out of place in the scene because of how all the context. And I had to have Fluttershy and Rainbow Dash flying in the scene, not because I wanted to have something special. I just if I had them standing on the ground, they would be much more packed shot. It would be a lot harder to see all the characters at once in a way that was it made the most sense in the frame. And I realized let's have them fly just to make it a bit more overwhelming for Twilight.
The night will last forever.
And people pointed out how funny it is just for Starlight to just enjoy the whole thing. But you have the one thing that the one thing that Twilight will just point out. Oh yeah, she doesn't know that yet. And you had Spike in that position in the episode. It's a bit silly, but that's how things are. And you have the background characters reacting. This scene was kind of a nightmare to render as well in terms of just proportions, but that's how the show was. And you have some reenactment of some scenes from the show with some fancy lighting because. Nightmare Moon defeats 80%. Originally, in the original script, the idea was to have a reenactment of the whole scenes where you have Starlight basically giving advice to characters on how to defeat Nightmare Moon. But I realized at some point, like, this feels like I'm just explaining the things that already explains themselves, and it felt a lot anticlimactic for the whole thing. So just revealing the point that Starlight already helped them defeat them would be a lot more effective, and I could focus on the more essential parts. And you have the shot that's technically just me just reskinning one of the models from Luna's Determination and just adding a lot of wear from time. So all the cracks, adding plants everywhere, the debris from Nightmare Moon's armor, and just the glow effect with the volumetrics. And in the back you have some trees, and the thing I was asking a friend, like, do you have any good shots of trees that I could just look at as a good reference? And I ended up just blue screening some trees that he shot in video as footage in the back, just to have some cool shadows to affect the overall shape of the light in the scene. And as it turns out, Blender doesn't let you do blue screen out of the compositor. Well, it does lets you in the compositor, but not out of shader, unless you cheat it. And it turns out I just made a shader just to key out the blue out of the footage you shot, just to get those cool shadows. It was taking like is it gonna look a bit too photoreal? But then I realized that the glass would be very frosted, so it would just cover it up. And then you have the transition between the just a pattern of light moving, and I wanted to have it transitioning from the sun moving in the other shot, and it worked pretty well.
Hey, Pony. Rainbow, you're a bit too high in the frame. Can you fly a little lower? Great. Alright.
I was thinking at some point, like, where do I put Starlight so she doesn't look out of place? Until I realized, no, she needs to look out of place. And you see really how, and we in the show, they when they take that one photo, they don't take it in front of the tree, but they kind of do in one of the pictures already shown. It's mostly just that the intro of the show cuts a lot of things just for the context of it. And I realized, like, let's make it so the scene just shows the photo being taken in front of the tree, like a regular event in their daily lives. And then you see the this part here that was very inspired by me watching a lot of Technology Connections. He was doing a whole video about this exposure circle, and just it's technically a mistake because it's not supposed to look like that. But then I realized, like, Spike wouldn't know how to use it properly, so the exposure circle is just messed up. So he probably got a very overexposed picture, but I'm pretty sure Celestia won't care.
There's Celestia. 3, 2, 1. Action!
And you see Luna, this is going to be relevant later. Yeah, who the hell is she?
Hey, Starlight. I got a +1 for the Grand Galloping Gala. Would you like to join me?
Oh, I would love to go to the Grand Galloping Gala, but I wouldn't want to take the 6th one from one of you.
I only got 2, actually. Wait,
And we basically, and the whole idea with this scene was that I wanted to show how knowing things in advance could lead to avoiding conflicts, but the idea is that they learn a lot from those conflicts, they learn a lot from those mistakes. So you have Starlight trying to do the good thing by avoiding those things, and it's going to be relevant later.
you think Celestia would give us 7 tickets instead of 2?
Oh,
That's a great idea. I was so worried our friends would fight over them. But Celestia knows we're great friends, so I'm sure she will say yes. Thanks, Starlight.
Well, that will make her a very interesting friendship lesson this week.
So the idea that was there was, okay, so Starlight needs to realize, okay, I should let bad things happen as the part of life, but then I wanted to show, like, what would be the best way, based on season 1 elements, like, what would be the best way for her to simply realize letting bad things happen also hurts the soul a lot.
What? We're trying to hide from her.
She's a zebra. You've never heard of them? Not even in books?
yeah, no, I don't think so.
I'm telling you, she's evil.
Originally, the scene was supposed to end with this scene, and realized at some point, like, this doesn't work as intended, so I ended up just extending it to show really I needed to show it in a way where Starlight had to do something more physical to just show the decision making she had to do. So I ended up having to pull off, it was not even storyboarded, it was basically just a couple of shots that I had to animate very quickly. This is a rescan of a shot of Celestia walking as a filly from the beginning of Harmony. I was realizing, like, I need a shot of Apple Bloom just walking in the Everfruit forest, and I don't have a lot of time left because at the time there was maybe 2 months before the release. So I just reskinned that shot with the Apple Bloom model, and I made the most basic of models of the trees. If you look at them for a bit too long, you realize that some of the things are very off. So that's why the shot is very short. And sometimes you have to do very quick setups. They're very hacky. I had to render things in separate layers and then try to do a lot of things to just try to fake the look as intended. But it's quick enough that you have you don't care too much. You have the shot just to give context, and then I had to take all the models I already did of the entrance of the Everfree Forest and to try to make something that looked a bit like the inside. Added a lot of motion blur. It's done from a point of view because I wanted to show how dramatic it was. And looking back, I'm not sure if this was the best of approaches, but the poison joke in the scene is glowing. And the moment that you have Starlight just start slowly realizing that I had to let things go. In this very quick moment, you have the reverse vertigo effect, where you just compress the space by getting farther away and just zooming. As it keeps going farther away and zooming, one of the things I wanted to show is, okay, I should let things go. And it just slowly stops zooming and just goes farther away, and then it transitions to the other shot. So you have Trixie's carriage being destroyed. I wanted to have an actual scene with Trixie, but at the time I couldn't find any voice actor for Trixie that could be pull off the role, and I was realizing, like, this is not a story about Starlight and Trixie, this is a story about Starlight and Twilight, so let's focus on the right things. And we have all the other things that where you have Starlight knowing all the answers, but not being willing to talk because she realizes the importance of she realizes the impact she would have on all the lessons of friendship. She could jeopardize a lot of things and keep just going back and back and back. Originally, this scene was supposed to be. There was a whole script written for that one scene where you have all the characters asking, like, "What are you looking forward to at the Wonderbolts Junior competition?" And then you have Starlight just saying, "I look very forward to Rarity just trying to fly with those wings," and all the characters just look at her and just say, "Oh, you're silly, you're funny," and then you just keep going. And one of the key things, there's a burner with the twinkling balloon. There is none in the show for some reason. I thought, like, I'm not gonna air it on TV. Let's show fire, so like I'm gonna scare the kids with it. And I ended up just putting some flames and just designing some kind of burner that would look decent. And you have the little distortion of the twinkling balloon that was simply just basically you take the UV coordinates that define the placement texture on the model, and you just warp them with a bit of noise. So, and if you don't do this for the bump mapping, just looks like there's some fabric that's moving around with the model that just gives a feel that there's some heat distortion involved.
I didn't know you knew the teleportation spell too.
And you see the back of the tree that looks very boring because, yeah, nobody's seen that. It's probably because it's boring. And you can see a bit better in this shot that there's only like 10 houses that are just repeated. And it doesn't look too bad because they're seen from different angles, and since they're just put together in a way where it's not a repetition, it doesn't feel too samey, so it really helps.
It's pretty complex magic. I think we're the only two unicorns in this town who can do it.
Oh well, you know, being an only child like...
For that scene, the one thing I was realizing, they're talking about the teleportation spell, so shouldn't like Starlight just use it instead of just walking in? And I realized, like, let's just do a cool effect where she just teleports in.
I just read a lot of books about magic when I was left alone. I suppose shining armor was very busy when you were young, right?
Not really.
This is season 1, Starlight, remember?
Hold on. I didn't tell anybody here he was my brother. Spike, did you tell her?
Oh no, I thought you said you wanted to keep it a secret.
Oh, I thought You said you had a...
Starlight, ever since I met you, I feel like you've been hiding things from us. Are you trying to hurt me? You knew about Luna. You knew about the tickets. What are you? Did Celestia send you to spy on me?
I'm not a spy.
And one key thing I was discussing with Blue Brony about in this scene was I don't want to have too much music because this is a very important thing, and I really want to have something a bit more, something a bit more intense. It was relevant. Like, no, let's calm down. Let's focus all our energy on what they're saying. I also made sure that the for that scene, the characters would just basically they would keep talking, but the animation itself wouldn't rely too much on camera movement. I would try to avoid any spectacle with the visuals because it was a moment that was supposed to be very, very drastically personal. It's quite interesting because originally the very first script that I had, none of this happened. Actually, the first script was simply about Starlight threatening to go back in the past to live with the main six, and you had Twilight from the future going with Twilight, but with Starlight just saying like, don't do this. So a lot of this conversation was originally with the future Twilight until I realized like the old Twilight probably knows some stuff about the idea of missing out because she's joined the group very late, just like Starlight, and a lot of it is inspired by me. Like I joined the Brony fandom in 2013, and I was already feeling like I missed out on a lot of events from 2012 and 2011. And I realized when I was talking with other people who joined the fandom in 2019, 2020, I'm not Starlight in the story. I'm Twilight, so I should try to give something, give more hope to people in a way that feels more. Comes from me, something that feels like I'm just trying to explain to people, don't worry about this, things will be fine. And I realized like past Twilight would make the most sense for this scene, just explaining her issues. And part of it was also that while working in the project, I realized that I would have a lot more budget to pull all the shots I wanted set in the past. So it basically doubled the length of the project. And unfortunately, there was a scene that I was very excited for, where you have Starlight asking Twilight, basically like, because you have Twilight saying like, "Aren't you selfish or threatening to destroy the world just to get you what you want?" And then you have Starlight just responding to Twilight like, "I'm selfish or just wanting the same thing as everybody else." And then Twilight just doesn't know what to answer for that. So I'll keep going with the scene. Just nothing said.
From where I'm from, we could meet in a few years, becoming great friends. But I always felt out of place in the gang, being the one who came last. I wasn't there for the most important moments of your life. I wasn't with you at the Grand Halloween Gala. I wasn't there when you found the elements of harmony. I wasn't there at your car.
Spoiler!
Right, I don't have it.
How could you lie to me like this?
Can we just keep it between the two of us? I can't miss out on those things. I promise I'll stay quiet.
I know how you feel, Starlight. I also joined them late, missing out on many other stories. I know it doesn't feel right, but it doesn't make our friendships any less genuine.
You're right. I can't continue to pretend to laugh at jokes when I already know the punchline.
I'm sorry.
And you have back the scene from before with a couple of tweaks for the context. For example, you have the golden acorn, and the acorn was quite interesting as a design. I was thinking what would be the best way to have an acorn that would fit the look, and I ended up realizing like, let's take a regular acorn and take the top base and just add a star pattern, heart pattern, because a lot of things in Ponyville have heart shapes for some reason, and I thought maybe it could be fitting. There's two different models of that same acorn. You're going to be able to see the other one later. This scene was late edition as well, because I realized like I need something to contextualize change their heart. And you have this shot. I was talking with Blue Brony and Saf. Saf was my sound designer, sound engineer for all of it. And one of the things I was talking about was the I just wanted to show Starlight going away without making it too complex. And the one thing I was inspired by was the lightning effect from Back to the Future. And Seth told me, well, I haven't seen Back to the Future, and I had to show him the scene just to give him a good idea. And I didn't want it to just be like a reference, because reference just for the sake of reference was not isn't worth it. But I realized, like, let's go with just something that just they had the right idea with the way that they handled the effect. So let's go with something a bit like that, and I think it worked well for that. And then I just reused the scene setup that I had from the previous scene, but the animation was changed. And this scene was the idea of what influenced the next montage. The idea was simply to have Starlight just not being in those shots, just to explain to the audience in a very simple way that Starlight is just gone. She just erased that timeline. Well, erased. She basically just went back to the original timeline as things came back to normal. And I was thinking, like, let's just disable the layer of Starlight in that compositing, and that's it. And then the scene doesn't look as jarring anymore because Starlight is gone, and it just makes the idea that you saw Starlight earlier with in that scene just feel even more bizarre as you look back.
Yeah, 3, 2, 1, action!
And then you have Luna being absent. The idea was mostly just the idea of the butterfly effect, like by influencing some tiny things, Luna would be just there at the throne room as they received the letter. And the idea of that montage was really like, I'll show all the shots, well, not all the shots, but a quick montage of all the shots that were involved with Starlight, and just disable Starlight, the rendering. And I realized later, like, this is not enough. Let's keep going and just show a good montage of the key elements of those seasons to try to remember a bit those moments, but in a way where you don't feel like you're happy with those moments. You feel like you're really missing out on those moments, and makes you feel sad because Starlight missed out on those elements as well. And a lot of it, since those shots, you have very, very quick shots. For example, this shot is simply just re-rendering that scene, but without Starlight. But then you have this one. This one actually was done before until I realized, like, I need to have the shot of the twinkling balloon for the scene, so I had to build a whole new setup for the other scene. And then you have this one that I had to do very quickly, and it's not everybody's favorite episode, but I realized, like, it's not just about the best episodes, it's also about the ones we remember for liking them. And then you have the setup that I had to do, trying to eat through these houses by cheating with compositing, just adding some debris, some edge detail to make it feel like the breezes ate everything. This one was quite interesting, mostly just trees and simulations of leaves, and then just adding the characters running. And those shots, some of them took longer than others, but I realized, like, they were very important, even though they're very short. Let's put a lot of love in them. And some of them are some of them simpler than others, like the back views of the characters that I had. I had a setup to render them within the 3D views. I could just render that camera and not having to worry about that. Celestia turning her head was actually reused from the Fall of Sunset Shimmer. And the stained glass was already something I had back from Dinky's Destiny. So just reusing them to pull off those scenes very quickly, because it's 15 minutes long, but some of, since I was the only animator on the whole project, I didn't have a lot of time to afford for those things. And And some of those shots are very simple, like the one you saw just earlier with Magic Duel. The glass was simply just a pane of glass was just bent a bit. This one is just reused from the beginning of Harmony. I just added Twilight and added the flashbacks. And the flashbacks are simply scenes from previous projects that are just added with some glow, so you think that they're more from the show. Reused from the Fall Sunset Shimmer. The castle that was reused from Luna's Determination. A scene from Solidarity, PMV, with some tweaks because of continuity. The Discord read that I had for another project, I realized like I have Discord, I should have him for like, at least show that he was involved. And I realized like you have like the rig that I had was originally for a PMV based on Discord, let's use it. And then you have the shot that just shows that just shows the one key moment that we all hated, and it felt really weird to have to reanimate that scene because the music is very triumphant at that moment, and we know it's a very sad moment, and we know what to expect. And you can see the as it passed, you could see a little flame. It just started burning one of the trees. I just added it as a detail because I realized while I was trying to set up the scene to work that the bush was there in the way of the path of the fire. And you can see a bit the teleportation effect that was something I already built back in the days, just to show a bit more the context. And usually what you did with that scene, you stayed on Twilight as she left, but I thought like, let's focus on the tree as it blows up. You see the detail of the crack of just the heat just starting to expand everything. And this scene goes with the camera just panning down. Originally, the idea was not even to have the explosion. You have Twilight and Starlight just talking about the fact that they're not in the proper time. They need to go back. So you had the camera simply panning, going from the Golden Oak Library, panning up to the moon and panning down to the absence of the Golden Oak Library. And I was like, let's keep at least the part where it pans down to show that there's nothing left. And you simply have Starlight just staring at the next thing.
Hey, Starlight. Still working on the magic tree tonight? Not tonight. I'm just here to think.
And this is the second model that I had. I had to make a model that looked a bit more like the characters because I realized if I have something that looks like gold that's very shiny next to a character, it would look a bit weird. So this one is more cel-shaded with some more basic looks, just so it doesn't look too jarring with Starlight, as she's just holding it.
Oh, this golden oak seed. I think
And yeah, I was told you don't say a golden oak acorn. You don't say the golden oak seed. You say a golden oak acorn. But the reason why I didn't go with acorn was that I wanted to focus on the word seed as it's a seed for the future, and I was thinking like it's more relevant to the story itself. And sometimes you go with you won't go. Sometimes the word selection for that kind of thing is more important for what it means later. And I thought it was more important for that. So you have, and the idea that I had with that, I'm not the only one who had the idea of just what if they planted another tree, because the roots that just grow, and something just to show to people like you might have missed out on the previous seasons, the feel it is to see the episodes premiering, but that doesn't mean that we're not gonna get more ponies in the future. Doesn't mean that we can look up to more things in the future. And you just have Starlight just saying to, basically Starlight saying to Twilight, like, let's plant a seed. Let's keep going as, as a group.
the replica of the old tree will never match the original one. But maybe planting a new one to see it grow together is what we need.
But what if it doesn't grow to be like the old one?
G5.
Maybe it doesn't need to. Thank you, Twilight, for everything.
And a nice panel just to show that their little story is tiny in the grand scheme of things, not to worry about those things. And technically it's not missing out, it's a My Little Pony missing out, but missing out is shorter. And then you have the credits that just show the passing of time and the idea. I didn't show the School of Friendship because the model looked very bad from close up. So, and I thought this would feel a bit weird to have that story set that far in the future of the series. And you see in this shot, okay, that's the last few days in Vancouver, but the basically you have a pass called a z-depth. It's simply a map where the color represents the depth of the pixel at this point. And what you can do is that you can isolate it and use it as a mask between two different, basically just mask between two renders. So I had the render of what it looked like in summer, and then I just used the z-depth to mask out to the past to see what it looks like in winter. And then you faded it slightly, you had a bit of edge blur, and it just looks like just winter just passing by. And you can see all the ponies just in the ice rink, and you can see, it's kind of hard to see, but there's Dinky who's simply just falling. And it's kind of based on me when I was a kid trying to, my dad was trying to get me to know how to ice skate, and I kept falling and falling and falling, and I think my dad realized, oh no, I'm raising a nerd. And then you have Dinky a bit older, and you see a bit that, they're still very together as a family. And I was thinking also, like, it kind of feels weird to have them in the credits while it's not really their story, but it's the story of a lot of people. And of course, a special thanks to all the people who supported me in this project. And you have the new tree. I was a bit skeptical on that one because the new tree, I was thinking like it's supposed to look at least a bit like the old one, but I was thinking like the shape needs to be at least a bit different, and I ended up just modeling something that looked a bit interesting in my opinion. And I still went, I don't like the best the giraffe Twilight as her design, but I realized I should also embrace the things that I don't personally like, but that are very meaningful to the show, including the new Twilight, and of course Starlight, who just comes by in the scene with her new outfit. And I thought it was very important in that shot to just show just them looking forward, in this case literally looking left to right, because in screen direction, the idea that when you look forward, usually you have characters looking from left to right because of the reading direction. And I thought, let's go with that. Let's go with the characters just staring at the tree as they're staring forward to the future. And it's quite interesting because the production of the project was while we had all the rumors about G5, and we were very skeptical. And while personally G5 doesn't hit the same feel that I really loved about G4, it still has a lot of things I respect about it that I really enjoy. And I think we should, as a fandom, be open about the idea that it won't be like the old stuff, but it doesn't mean that it's going to be bad just because it's different. And I think it's very important to just look at the bright side of those things. And I just at a raise of hand, who here is their first convention? You enjoy it? Are you looking forward to the next one? See, that's the thing. That's the great thing. I remember, and part of it was also inspired by me going to their very last Nightmare Nights. It was my first Nightmare Nights. There's a panel where you had people talking about their con stories with all the previous Nightmare Nights. And it was the panel right before closing, so there was nothing else. So I was there, and I heard people talking about the experience that they had. at previous Nightmare Nights. I was feeling sad that was my only one, and as it turns out, 2 years after, we had a HarmonyCon at the same hotel, and it felt like I was just back. It was a different vibe for sure, but it felt like I was being reassured things will be all right, things will keep going, and as a fandom, we're still going strong. We keep hearing the running gag that the fandom is going to be dying, but I've heard those stories back in 2013. People were saying the fandom will die in 5 years best. We're going strong. And as I'm talking about BronyCon, do I have enough time? I think I do. I'm going to do a quick one. Do you remember Good Morning Baltimore? So I'm not the director in Good Morning Baltimore, but I was, the project was directed by Pika Pidi, he's a traditional animator, and he was asked, we need to get Good Morning Baltimore done before BronyCon. We have 2 months, so let's assemble a theme and let's get going. So we just start, for example, in the shots for those were art provided by the BronyCon art team. And I don't need to specify that Good Morning Baltimore is based on Good Morning Baltimore. This shot was cursed. Not because animating twice the same character from 2 different angles is twice the work and a bit painful. No. It's cursed because everybody who worked on that shot ended up having something bad happen to them. And the running gag with that one was that if you touch it, something bad will happen to you. So let's not put the best animators on this because we don't want bad things to happen. We had one of the people ended up getting sick. We got someone else who got their computer just breaking very badly. And then PD, who looked at it, I think a week after, had to evacuate because of forest fire that was right next to his house. He ended up not getting any burn, but we got scared. And that's why in the credits later you see a reference to the girl from The Ring. Just because that shot was that cursed. Honestly, when we were working on animating that shot, the original animator who was working in it tried to animate her just jumping on it and trying to make very complex thing until PD just said, no, just slide her in. It's going to work a lot better. So we ended up just sliding her in as she's following the garbage truck. It just works so much better. And then she just jumps and more art provided by the BronyCon team. I worked on that shot. Yeah, it's called Water Guy. So in the original scene, the plan we had was we wanted him to be a unicorn, and we were told, based on some people already drawing him before, people thought that he'd fit more as a zebra, and ice cold water, only $1 rhymes, so we thought, it fits. One problem, we planned him as a unicorn, so how is he gonna give the water bottle now that he doesn't have the magic thingy? So we realized, let's have the little filly who just gives the money, let's make her a unicorn. And then he just throws it. And it worked very well for that. It's funny thing, the ice cold water was just an inside joke that was left as a placeholder, and we never ended up replacing it. And I'm here because, as it turns out, we were told like if you animate a shot, you can add your OC in the background. I animated a bunch of shots.
VIPs ready to meet their fans. I've got my clipboard.
So, actually, I'm gonna rewind a bit. She says, "Oh ho ho! I got my clipboard and radio. I'm ready to go." And in the shot, one of the problems I realized in the animatic we're given, she didn't have any radio. I was talking with PD like, "Where's the radio?" She got the clipboard. It makes the most sense for her to have it in her hooves. And we didn't really know what to do with it. I just realized, like, I'm just gonna add an earpiece and just put the wire just going behind her ear, and just go with it. And it worked pretty well. And sometimes it's very simple solutions to problems. And don't be afraid to just go and ask that kind of question. Sometimes you'll be able to fix it pretty quickly. And in this case, it worked.
My clipboard and radio. I'm ready to go.
This was not a scene animated by Flufflepuff, but it was a scene that was done with his authorization. And I don't remember who animated it. I think it was Mega Man Hunter who worked on that one.
Happy inside to you.
I'm not saying that it's based on a real story, but the real Fluffy Mixer is a bit of an introvert. So if you have some famous people you really look forward to, some of them are very introverted. So it's okay. Just give them a bit of space. Maybe they'll open up, but just respect that. So it was a good reminder, like, be careful with those people.
Good morning, clouds and air. There are cosplayers everywhere. The marketplace.
This one scene I remembered was done by Mega Man Hunter, and it's quite interesting. He's not from the US at all. He's never been to a My Little Pony convention, but he really wanted to help us. And he was basically asking us, like, what kind of thing are being sold at conventions, because he had no idea what the kind of experience, and we're trying to explain him the experience. And I think he captured it very well in this scene.
There's a world of light. It's very hard to plan the sky. Good morning.
The only canon character we were allowed to use in the whole thing. Originally we were thinking, like, because with cosplayers, thinking like, what if they cosplay canon characters? And we realized that the only one we could get away with was Crackle with the dragon boats from Baltimore. So I ended up just working in this shop. And the funny thing is that I was basically told, you'll see a bit later. And I was told, like, can you make Craggle just blink?
I know every step, I know every song, I know it's the place where I belong. I see all those money lights shining ahead. Tell me before I drop dead.
Morning, don't stare. Give us a chance. We might find romance or friends today.
We got very worried we'd get in trouble for that one, and surprisingly we didn't, so.
Everything is made of it, approved. So please take my oath. Now we start the show. Get ready to go. I feel the racing inside my heart.
We know we're guilty of that a lot. But the funny thing is that Main Event and Hoofbeats are canonly supposed to be a couple, which is adorable. But that means that Blank and Viz is kind of a third wheel, so I feel bad for her. This is a security mascot from BronyCon, because for some reason they had their own mascot, which was not technically tied to the other ones. They used to sell plushies of mascots, but separately. I'm not entirely sure why it was set like that, but we thought, yeah, no, well, let's put the security staff as nice spotlight in the animation. So let's go with that. Yeah, and people might remember the the plushie cannon. There was also a T-shirt cannon, and in the scene we had the previous con chair of the con just throwing it around, and I thought let's put, and of course my OC is there, and on the left you see Spring Hope who has one of our connections to BronyCon. I was thinking like, okay, she has more power than me, so I'm gonna try to make it look like she's kind of winning at getting that plushie. And you have Ponies in Reverse, one of the other animators who worked on it, making a cameo. And this shot in the back is not technically a 3D model. It's me just flexing my abilities with Flash. Just at some point I was saying like I'd like to do a nice, cool perspective effect within Flash, and PD was was originally thinking that I'd only go with just scaling down the vector we had. So I ended up just splitting it into layers, just scaling those layers to get the feel of perspective. The part that was the most of a nightmare was the pattern, the floor that is very iconic, and I realized like I can't not have it. So I ended up just having lots of masking and lots of weird things just to get the pattern to properly scale. That was us. Yeah, there was a running gag about me trying to make a rig for a griffin based on the drawings that PD gave, and turns out it was a disaster. And PD just looked at the vector and just asked like, "Minty, are you all right?" And the worst part is that he said that in a way where he felt very deeply concerned for my soul. He's thinking like, do you need some time? And I was saying like, I'm going with the designs we have, and eventually you just told me like, just make Gilda as a cop. And we have the key moment with all the characters. We basically we were told, PD was asking me like, what's the best way to have characters at 2D characters blending with 3D background without having too much of a worry. And the thing we realized is that having the camera very close to the ground would eliminate a lot of perspective worries. We're supposed to have more characters, but time restraints and rendering limitations meant that we had to cut down a bit. But and a funny thing is that the fireworks at the very end were not meant to be there. We realized they were in the song, but the one thing that PD was talking with H3, one of our animators, who was having some struggles at first, he was showing that he was really good at making that kind of effects, and it was at some point he was talking with PD, just saying like, I like to do those things, and he was feeling a bit bad until PD just told him like, there are some people who are just paid to just do that, and it's really encouraged him to make that kind of effects for the project, which we're really glad of, because artists just doing that kind of effects are incredible. They're very, very useful for that kind of production, and I think it's very important because it reminded me that some people are very good at very specific things and they don't realize it because they're not trying those things because they think that's not worth it. And let's go. We don't have a lot of time left. There's a very important panel afterwards. Let's go with the credits. There's a couple of shots that you'll probably recognize. Yeah, this is why we animated that shot in the for the credits. We realized like this shot was so cursed. Let's go with it. And one of the things with technically the credits are not part of the release version. We ended up doing those parodies right after. So one of them is very relevant to the experience we got at the convention. And some of you might remember that. Yeah, that was horrible. Everybody was saying that all over the place. It was worse than the fun from 2013. And yeah, we ended up doing that one. I remember there was a scene where we had the animation panel, and someone was just asking us, like, how do you get started with animation? And PD just jumped in and said, "Just do it!" And it was, and I remember animated James just looked at them and just walked out. That is hilarious. There was.
Good morning, Baltimore. Do not fret, there's too many crowds.
Yeah, this is why we don't have it Bronicon anymore. It's gone. Let's see, how much time do we have? I have like 2 minutes, I think, before the next panel. I do not want to take too much time from everybody else. There's the script reading panel right after, so if you want to stay in your seat and you're very excited for what's next, I think you're gonna have a good time. I personally. So I thank you all for coming. Technically, it's my last panel, but I'll be around all over the place. And I wish you all a good Vanhoover Pony Expo.